4 days ago, I broadcast from one of the most inspiring places I have ever been. It was the front porch of Ronald Reagan's beloved Rancho del Cielo, the ranch high above the Santa Barbara coast. He gave 40-plus radio addresses from that space, and so to broadcast from where the great communicator communicated was a privilege for which I will long thank the Young Americans Foundation for making it possible. It was a special day. It was the 25th anniversary of President Reagan's Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall speech. And I had a number of amazing guests. Two of the most amazing of them were Peter Robinson and Ed Meese. I bring up this broadcast, that anniversary, and those guests to make 6 points specifically to this audience, the RightOnline audience. First, this country has been in bad places before, in our lifetimes, or at least most of our lifetimes. I don't know if you recall 1978, 79, and 80, but it was a dreary time. Another speech that I was present for, in the rain, at my commencement at Harvard, was given by a Russian prophet, Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn, in which he declared we had lost, that it was over, that the world had split apart and the West had lost its ability to fight back against Soviet imperialism and the spread of communism. He did not see it then, but help was on the way, and help was named Ronald Reagan. Second, in our side, we often overestimate the power of our adversaries and our enemies. There are different categories here. Our political opponents and adversaries at home, and our deeply tyrannical, vicious, killing enemies abroad. We overestimate how strong they are. We look up at Wisconsin 2 years ago, we saw thousands of protesters occupying the Capitol, and we thought that is an army of union activists. We listen to the self-proclaimed wizards behind the curtain in Chicago, and we think Axelrod was good as opposed to just lucky. We look out across the ocean at the fanatical mullahs in Iran, or the secretive overlords of China, and we think, are we up to it? Solzhenitsyn, that prophet who was so wrong, wrote in his memoir, The Oak and the Calf, what if it's all paper mache? I think the left is paper mache. I think, as Michelle just talked about, the media, the occupiers, the progressive online, it's paper mache, and boy is it raining right now. That's a very good thing. The third point, everybody matters to this movement, online and in person. I mentioned Peter Robinson and Ed Meese for a reason. At the time of President Reagan's Brandenburg speech, one of them, Peter Robinson, was very young. At that time, in the Reagan years, I shared an office for a while between two very young people, one of whom was Peter Robinson, who would write Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, in his collaboration with President Reagan and the rest of the speechwriting staff on the Brandenburg Gate speech. He had to have been 30 or 31. On my other side, in the suite on the other side, I had left the White House by the Brandenburg Gate speech time, but the year before, there was a bright young lawyer who was astonishingly graceful and wonderful and absolutely brilliant. His name is Roberts. He's now the Chief Justice of the United States. At the time, Robinson and Roberts were very young men, but they were integral to the success of the Reagan presidency. But so too was Ed Meese, who at that time was middle-aged, and now is in his senior years of senior statesmanship to the movement. Always loyal, always there. As you look around, you'll see young people here, you'll see old people here, you'll see brand newcomers who haven't been part of the online effort for a week. And you'll see people like Michelle Malkin, or you'll hear of people like Powerline and Glenn Reynolds, who have been there for 10 and 12 and 13 years, back to the genesis of internet advocacy. And it doesn't matter. Every day is a new day online. And every barrier to entry is down. And you can be Michelle, you can be Powerline, you are in fact Michelle and Powerline. And I want to stress that everyone here matters a great deal. In the absence of hierarchy, in the overthrow of the old gatekeepers, we are all gatekeepers, so thank you for investing your activism here. It's crucial. 4, 32 years ago, 1980 election, everything was on the line. Ronald Reagan won it. It's all on the line again in 2012, and our values are going to be stretched and tested, and the competition is going to be very ferocious over the next 5 months between the values of the left and the values of the right. But it's not going to be the last round. We've made this mistake before. 32 years from now, and I hope I'm an old man in the back of the room sitting there chewing tobacco. 32 years from now, there will be another crisis like the crisis of 1980 and like the crisis of 2012. It is part of the obligation of this group to make sure that we are looking that far ahead and planning that far ahead and being part of a movement that is not ever satisfied that the end of history has been achieved, because there is no end of history short of the end of times. And that isn't coming around any time that we know for certain. And so I want to make sure that you are all committed not just to this fall and not just to the next 4 or 8 years, but to a longer project that requires renewal and accountability. Point number 5. A lot of conservatives don't like to talk about this, but I want to talk a moment about defense. Because the online community has to speak for the uniformed services that cannot speak for themselves because of our much treasured tradition in this country. President Reagan could give the Gorbachev tear down this wall speech because he had 600 ships, not 283. He had a defense establishment that was robust, that had been built up, that had an excess of 4% of GDP committed to it, had a strong leadership elite, and had been deployed successfully by him, and in which he had absolute confidence. We have another Pearl Harbor coming, but this one is self-inflicted, and it's called the sequestration, and it can't be allowed to go forward. It has to be part of our mission to tell people that the F-22 has been canceled and the F-35 extended almost to non-consequence. We have to tell them that our Navy is down to 283 ships and sinking further. We have to tell them that the President's budget wants to cut 20,000 Marines and 80,000 soldiers and sailors and airmen. He wants to close bases around the world. He wants to reduce our nuclear deterrent. He is not renewing the very structures and systems that make our military unsurpassed and provide the security for a free market to prosper. We have to tell that story in this election, because President Reagan told that story in 1980 and it resonated, and people out there that the media never see understand the shield that is at this moment afloat and in the skies and on the ground in Afghanistan and Somalia and around the world, and we have to tell their story because they cannot. So please do. My 6th point. I want to talk about what really matters most at this conference. It's about helping other people shine. On the last day of his life, Andrew Breitbart was my guest on air, and Andrew was a friend. Last time I saw him in person, he and Juan Williams and I, even though I was just a blogger, Juan's a good guy, by the way. He makes mistakes, but he's a good guy. Andrew, Juan, and I got together in Pasadena between an audience to discuss and promote school choice. And we spent a lot of time in the green room beforehand, and Andrew was just being typical Andrew. He was talking up other people, other people's projects, other people's successes. He was a force majeure, but he was primarily a force majeure in helping other people shine. This is a core value of the conservative movement, and I can't stress it enough. The success of others is your success. I go from here to New York City tomorrow to begin a book tour. Now, by decree of the publisher, I'm not supposed to mention the brief against Obama until tomorrow. And so I haven't. But I'm telling you about the brief against Obama because I want skeptics to understand there's a blurb on the front page of the book, up here on the top. It is a blurb by a person I am allegedly in competition with. It's a blurb by my good friend Mark Levin. Mark and I have been fellow travelers in the movement since the early years of the Reagan administration. And people look at it and they say, don't you compete? Aren't you on from 6 to 9? I say, we don't compete, we complement. Rush does not compete with Dennis. Sean does not compete with Bill Bennett. Laura Ingraham does not compete with Prager and Medved. Mike Gallagher does not compete with Neil and everyone else out there. We complement each other even as you complement each other in this movement. That's why. That is why Mark comes on my show to promote his book, why he blurbs mine. That's why Hannity welcomes me on, one of the most good and gracious people in the world of media. That's why we are always promoting each other, and why I promote so many of you, and why you should be promoting each other. I like to think of us as Amish barn builders, even though it's hard to think of Rush and Sean and Mark as Amish. We get together, we do not compete, we complement, and I want this to be really my takeaway. There's a new book out there right now, a book by Clayton Christensen, Harvard Business School. How will you measure your life? And the metrics you are going to use are not unique visitors to your site or the number of Twitter followers that you have or the number of page views. It's the number of those things that you can send to other people. Because in doing that, you will encourage the next generation of activists. You will build up that 32-year cycle. You will help assure that we do not have a crisis that we cannot meet. You are each other's best advocate. And please continue to do so online. Follow other people. Promote the good always. Find the good and praise it is on the tombstone of Alex Haley, and that was Lamar Alexander's famous phrase, and he adopted it from him, and I use it all the time. Find the good and praise it in our movement. And remember this, Larry O'Connor spoke passionately last night about Andrew, as did Joel, as did Dana, as did many others. They kept saying one thing, Breitbart is here. He is indeed here. Not only that though, more Breitbarts are coming, and you have to help them get here. Help is on the way. Romney is on the way. Marco Rubio is on the way. Rand Paul and Kelly Ayotte, Jim DeMint, and Mike Lee, and Eric Cantor, and Josh Mandel, and Ted Cruz are